assuming that across Canada this works, when would be the first new exam?
The first new exam would be, we're theoretically right now looking at a 2015 new final evaluation. So if you push that back, that means we have to have a new professional program up and running by fall of 2013, which is basically, you know, 18 months out, 17 months out. So we are proceeding to work on the development now. I mean, I presented you with a model. We are now we have teams in place to work on the development of the new program in anticipation, because we can't wait until next fall to determine determine whether or not this merger is going to go ahead. That won't give us enough time to get the new program in place. So for example, one of the big groups that we have in place right now is the Competency Map Committee, who are looking at drafting a new map, because the new map will drive everything, right? What goes into the modules, what goes into the practical experience requirements, everything is contingent upon what goes into the map. And plus, in addition to needing a program for 2015, possibly, you know, if there is a merger, we know for sure Quebec needs a program for 2015. So we have to meet their timelines. So there's a lot of pressure on the certification group to continue on with our work efforts that we've been looking at.
I don't fully understand this certificate process that you talked about, because one time you were saying that you're setting the bar really high, but then you're saying that, oh, there's other people that might want to come in that don't want to bar that high, so we're going to give them these certificates. All of a sudden you're diminishing the brand, I think. That certificate program, I think, compromises this whole CPA, and I think it's not fair. Oh, you don't want to do a CPA, the full-fledged thing, so we'll give you a half.
There's people out there today that do, you know, partially complete a designation, for example, and who are employed. And what we're suggesting is that you're going to want, you know, because the market needs that. The market needs that level.
The market needs it, but I don't see why we as CPAs need to offer it.
If we don't, I think the argument is that if we don't offer it and we don't keep it within our house, then somebody else will build it.
So
And whether it be the ACCAs come in and offer it, or whether it be something that develops grassroots, it will move in that direction. Dave?
But it'll be distinguished from the CPA. I think that's
Absolutely, clearly distinguished from the CPA. It is not a designation. It is a certificate program. It will have its own independent, unique education system that is very different than the CPA education model. It will be targeted and branded towards a different group of members within the organization, and different group of professional accountants. And as we said, we're doing a lot of market research to make sure that we can clearly distinguish between the two levels. There are a lot of other, sorry, go ahead.
The goal is, if we talk about someone that is a lawyer and we told you someone was a paralegal, you have an understanding, the marketplace has an understanding that a paralegal is not an employer. If you talk about a doctor and someone is a licensed practical nurse, the market has an understanding that there is a place for that, you know, paralegal, licensed practical nurse, but they're not a doctor, they're not a lawyer.
It's not governed by the same body.
In some jurisdictions in Ontario, the Law Society of Upper Canada governs both the benchers, the lawyers, and the paraprofessionals and the paralegals. So yeah, they are governed by, in many jurisdictions, whether it be the engineering technicians and the engineers, they are governed by the same bodies. And we have looked at that and done a lot of research about how we would regulate them, because there are many examples of where the full designation and the paraprofessional are governed. And the key thing is, and it's a very interesting point, is that they are governed then. So we can, by including this group within the CPA house, we can require that they have certain CPD requirements, for example, continuing professional development requirements. We can ensure that they are subject, they might not be subject to our full code of conduct because they wouldn't be fully designated, but they would be subject to certain aspects of our code of conduct. That way, I mean, not only is it from a branding perspective good to have these people in our house, and from a meeting the needs of the marketplace perspective, but it's also good from a regulatory perspective, because right in, if we have them in our house, we have to make sure they behave when they're there, and they do the things that they're supposed to do to try to ensure public protection, even at that level. So there are a lot of examples out there that we've looked at. We are not the only accounting profession in the world to be considering this. The South Africans right now are looking at they had a 2-tier. They actually had 3 tiers within their system. They have actually done a fairly comprehensive report right now whereby they're looking at 4 tiers. The certificate and then 3 other tiers underneath it. Their political environment, I think, is a little different, which is why they can look at multiple tiers. In New Zealand has always had, they have the designation, they have a technician level, which is sort of a very, fairly low bar, and then they have a mid-tier beside, so they have 3 as well. So there are a number of other countries that we're looking for and looking toward to get information about the process, but we're being very careful. And I understand your concerns, and I appreciate in terms of making sure that we're careful to do this right, because if we don't, we could, like I said, increase the confusion between the two, and that's absolutely what we cannot do. So we're being very cognizant of that.
There's a lot of questions here about specialization after the CPA designation is in place, and maybe you can explain a little bit about how that would be handled and give an example.
It's somewhat related to what I said earlier when, so far, I mean, there's still a lot of scrolling down to be worked on if it's a go, but everybody recognized that you can't simply take all 3 programs and put them together. So the challenge for the CPA people were, it was actually Kara Mitchell-Moore, who's our CEO in Alberta, and Tasha Batstone, who's the CEO of CA Newfoundland, but chairs their education arm at the Institute. When it was CA CMA and we were working on this, they were trying to identify a line that said, okay, that's what it takes to be a CPA. What's all the stuff below that line that a new member will have to do before they become a CPA? And then you have the specialties after that. So if you use the simple analogy of the medical profession, you go to your general practitioner, and if there's something particular wrong with you, he or she will send you off to a specialist in that particular area. So some people, most people will probably just stop and take their CPA and go work in the corporate world in some shape or form. But if you want to specialize in a certain area, you'll be able to. And that'll be post-designation.